If you've been arrested for a DUI in California, you're probably sitting there thinking your record, your license, maybe even your job is about to take a hit. You might have already Googled your case, watched a few videos, and now you're more confused than when you started, especially if the officer made it sound like the breath test means you have no chance. I'm Nana Knight, and I'm a California State Bar board certified specialist in criminal law, and I have defended many folks who are charged with DUIs in California. And what most people don't realize is this. DUI cases are often far more beatable than they look at first glance. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through 3 specific defense angles or strategies that can seriously weaken a DUI case against you, from how the stop happened, to how the tests were handled, to what the prosecutor actually has to prove in court. So if you're watching this because you feel like you're cornered, stay with me, because once you understand where these cases break, you stop making decisions out of fear. Now let's get into it, starting with the very first moment that decides a lot of these cases. The first question I want you to ask is simple. Did the police have a legal reason to pull you over? Because in California, officers can't legally stop you just because they have a hunch that you were drinking. They need what's called reasonable suspicion, some actual traffic violation or specific driving behavior like erratic driving that suggests some sort of impairment. That might be swerving, speeding, running a light, drifting across lanes, something concrete. But here's why this matters so much. If the stop was illegal, meaning the reason was weak, exaggerated, or made up after the fact, then a lot of what happens after the stop may not be allowed in court. That could include field sobriety tests, it can include your breath test, it could include the officer's observation. And if the key evidence gets thrown out, well, guess what? The whole case against you can collapse. And I'll give you a real world example. Someone was recently pulled over late at night, just a block away from their house. The officer claimed the license plate light was out. When we checked the car, it was actually working. We documented it. We found additional evidence to support it. And when the stop was challenged, the case was dismissed. So don't assume the stop was legal just because an officer wrote something down in their report. Ask, were you actually weaving, or was it just late at night and the officer decided to investigate? Did the report get the time and the location correct? Was there a call, or was it random? And if you were stopped at a checkpoint, California checkpoints have strict rules. If those rules weren't followed, the stop can be challenged. And that's the defense angle number 1. Now let's say the stop was legal. Most people think that the case is over once the breath or the blood test results come back and it shows them being impaired under the influence of alcohol. That's where the defense angle number 2 changes everything. Breath and blood tests are not magic. They're systems that are run by humans using machines and procedures that have to be done correctly. And when they're not done correctly, the results could be wrong, at the very least, questionable. So let's start with breath tests. Breath machines have to be properly maintained and calibrated. If they aren't, the number you see on could be unreliable. I've handled cases where the maintenance records showed that the device wasn't being serviced correctly or on time. And once you can show that the reliability of these machines is questionable, the prosecutor loses a huge piece of their case. Breath tests can also be affected by the person, not just the machine. Medical issues like acid reflux, diabetes, or asthma can impact the breath results. Even things like mouth alcohol, recent dental work, or certain mouthwashes, certain conditions can create readings that don't match what's actually happening in your blood system. And now let's talk about the blood test. People assume blood is always accurate, but blood results depend on the chain of custody and handling. The sample has to be drawn, stored, and preserved and tested correctly. If it sits too long, if it's stored improperly, if there's contamination, or if the lab procedures aren't followed, you can get fermentation and skewed results, meaning alcohol levels that don't reflect what your blood alcohol concentration was while you were actually driving. And timing, of course, matters. If your blood was taken much later than the driving, the prosecutor still has to prove what your BAC was at the time of driving, not just hours later. So one of the smartest things you can do through your lawyer is to demand records. Demand the breath machine maintenance and the calibration logs. Demand the blood chain of custody documents. Demand the lab paperwork, the phlebotomist certification, because those documents are where the cracks show up. Now, here's the third defense angle that's quietly deadly to the prosecution, and it's right in front of you. Police reports sound official. They look clean on paper, but they're written by humans after chaotic situations, and they're full of assumptions and sometimes flat out mistakes. After a DUI arrest, the officer writes a report that covers why they stopped you, what you look like, what they observed, what you said, how you did on the field sobriety test, and why they believe you were impaired. And the report usually includes phrases like red watery eyes or slurred speech, unsteady gait, strong odor of alcohol coming from the person. And here's what a good defense attorney does. They compare the report to the video. Dash cam, body cam, audio, timeline, dispatch logs. And when the video doesn't match the report, the officer's credibility starts to break. I've had cases where an officer wrote that someone was staggering or nearly fell, and the video showed them walking normally. I've had cases where an officer claimed someone failed every test, and the video, when we looked at it, showed them doing better than the report suggests. And once the judge or the jury sees the gap, what was written versus what was real, this creates reasonable doubt. Even small errors matter. Wrong times, wrong locations, copy-pasted language, missing details, because if the officer cuts corners on the report, the court starts to wonder what else they cut corners on, right? And in a DUI case, credibility is everything. So let's do a quick recap. If you've been arrested for a DUI in California, here are the 3 defense angles you should understand immediately. First, challenge the stop, because if the stop was illegal, the case can collapse. Second, challenge the breath or blood test, because the numbers aren't always reliable and the paperwork often reveals mistakes. Third, use the officer's own report against them, because when the report doesn't match the video or the facts, credibility starts to break and doubt grows. And that matters because if you don't understand where the weaknesses are, you can walk into court assuming you have to plead guilty, when in reality, you may have real leverage to protect your license and your record and your future. If you want, my next video is how to beat an assault charge in California, because a lot of people don't realize how broad assault laws can be and how often those cases fall apart when you know what to look for. Watch the next video and you'll understand the exact defense angles that can save you from jail time, job loss, and a criminal record that can follow you for years. And I'll see you over there.